You didn't fall in love. You fell into a role. Not because you were weak, but because no one ever taught you the difference between being seen and being projected onto. You thought she saw you, not your face, not your body, not the curated charm, but the man underneath. The silent storms, the unspoken fears, the weight you carry alone in the dark. But the truth is, she never really saw you. She saw an image, an echo of a dream she's been carrying since childhood. And when you stood before her, she didn't greet a man. She greeted a mirror, polished just enough to reflect the fantasy she never outgrew. Carl Jung didn't whisper this truth gently. He declared it with the weight of 1,000 fractured psyches. People don't fall in love with others. They fall in love with the story they've created around them. And for men, this realization comes too late. After the mask falls, after the fantasy fades, after she looks at you not with love, but with disappointment that feels personal, but isn't. Because you weren't chosen, you were cast. Not as a partner, but as a character in a play she's been directing since she was old enough to mistake infatuation for connection. What she loved wasn't you. It was how well you fit the script. You thought her passion meant intimacy. You mistook being idolized for being understood. But when you showed your real self, your doubts, your anger, your depth, something in her recoiled because it broke the illusion. It shattered the dream. Not because you failed her, but because you interrupted the storyline she never told you she was writing. Jung called it the animus, the masculine force within the female psyche. When integrated, it brings wisdom, logic, and grounded strength. But when it's immature or fractured, it turns women into seekers of chaos, lovers of the unattainable, addicts to emotional danger. This distorted animus doesn't whisper, it commands. It makes her chase the wild man, the dark poet, the emotionally distant mystery, then punish him for not staying gentle, stable, and safe. It turns kindness into weakness, presence into boredom, and love into war. And the worst part? Most women don't even know it's happening. They project it, live through it, and make men the battlefield for a war that isn't ours. So you try harder. You soften. You smile when you're breaking. You stay calm when you want to scream. Why? Because you thought love was something to be earned, and the cost was your truth. You thought if you just proved yourself, if you were solid, dependable, good, she'd finally choose you for you. But what you didn't see is that she wasn't choosing you at all. She was choosing the idea of you. And when you deviated from that idea, even by an inch, her gaze changed. Not because she stopped loving you, but because she never really started. And the tragedy? You knew it. Deep down, you knew. But you played along, because being adored as a fantasy felt safer than being rejected as yourself. You traded authenticity for attention. You made yourself easier to love by making yourself harder to recognize. You bit your tongue when your truth begged to be spoken. You agreed to things that made your soul shrink. And why? Because the little boy inside you still believed that if you were just good enough, she'd stay. But Jung warned us, the man who chases validation is already lost. In trying to be her everything, you became her nothing. Just another shadow dancing in the theater of her projections. You weren't loved. You were used. As a mirror, a mask, a stand-in for the man she's never met within herself. And when the illusion cracked, the curtain dropped. No warning, no second act. She didn't leave the real you. She left the fantasy she could no longer maintain. And here's the paradox that shatters men. The more available you are, the less desirable you become. You thought devotion would keep you safe, that if you gave her all of you, she'd finally give you her truth. But Jung taught what many men refuse to accept. The feminine does not crave safety. It craves mystery. And the man she can fully define, she cannot desire. Not because she's cruel, but because her psyche is wired to chase what it can't quite touch. So you tried to become the perfect boyfriend, the ideal man, the savior. But perfection is sterile. It's lifeless. It's a performance. And presence, true presence, is what the feminine actually yearns for. When you traded that presence for performance, she felt it. Maybe she didn't say it. Maybe she didn't even understand it. But instinctively, she stopped trusting you. Because you were no longer anchored. You were no longer you. And as you start waking up, when you begin to see the roles, the projections, the masks, you stop reacting. You start observing. And suddenly, people grow uncomfortable. Not because you've grown distant, but because you've grown clear. Clarity is terrifying. They can't manipulate a man who sees through the game. So they call you arrogant, emotionally unavailable, even cruel. But what they really mean is, I can't control you anymore. You are no longer their mirror. You are no longer their puppet. You have become grounded. And Jung warned us, clearly, the awakened man is not celebrated. He is feared, not because he is dangerous to others, but because he is no longer owned. You wanted to save her. You thought if you loved her hard enough, stayed long enough, were patient enough, she would finally awaken. But Jung made one thing brutally clear. No one can walk the inner path for someone else. You cannot fix the chaos in her by being calm. You cannot bleed for her wounds and call it healing. She must face her own animus. She must confront her own shadow. Until she does, she will keep casting men as gods and punishing them for not being divine. She will chase illusions, resent reality, and repeat the cycle. You are not her therapist. You are not her savior. You are not her father. You are a man, and a man cannot carry a woman's soul. One day, if you stay the course, if you walk the lonely, brutal, sacred path of becoming, you will meet her. Not a goddess, not a mirror, not a fantasy. A woman. A whole woman. One who has faced her demons, held her darkness without flinching, and burned through every lie she once told herself about love. And when you meet her, something inside you will settle, because she won't ask you to perform. She won't need you to prove. She won't shrink from your depth. She will see you, not the mask, not the potential, but you. And she won't flinch, because she has already met herself in the mirror Jung described, the one that doesn't flatter, but reveals. And in that moment, love will stop being a transaction. It will become a presence. Calm, clear, true. But to get there, you must give up the addiction to being chosen. Most men never make it. They trade the silence of growth for the noise of attention. They settle for being useful, being liked, being wanted, even if it means being fake. They become actors in plays they didn't write. And when the lights go out, when the woman leaves, when the fantasy dies, they point fingers. They call her cold, manipulative, shallow. But Jung wouldn't let you hide. He'd ask, why did you volunteer for that role? Because that's the truth. You weren't a victim. You were a volunteer. You chose the fantasy. You chose to be small. You chose to be safe instead of true. But here's the brutal miracle. You can stop right now. The path of individuation begins the moment you stop performing. The moment you choose yourself, not in ego, but in truth. The man who no longer chases, no longer bends for applause, no longer shape-shifts for love, that man becomes dangerous. Not because he harms others, but because he cannot be controlled. He lives by his own script. He belongs to himself. And that kind of man is rare. feared, respected, desired. Not because he needs to be, but because he doesn't. Carl Jung didn't give us instructions. He gave us a mirror, and in it, he showed us the tragedy of modern man, that we would rather be adored as a lie than rejected as our truth. But the man who faces himself, who chooses depth over illusion, freedom over validation, truth over comfort, he becomes unstoppable. And when he meets a woman who has done the same, love is no longer performance. It is revolution. If you've made it this far, you already know. You're not like most men. You're not here to play a role. You're here to remember who you are. But most won't hear this. They'll scroll. They'll forget. But you can stop the cycle. So share this, not for me, but for the man still pretending. The man who still believes love means disappearing. Show him the mirror. And if this lit something inside you, subscribe. Join the movement. We're not chasing fantasy. We're choosing truth. And we're waking men up, one soul at a time.